great to be back here. It's been, I guess, about 2 years since it was last year. I always feel so welcome, just like I'm part of the family. And that's really a compliment, because I get to go to a lot of churches, and there are many churches that it's not the feeling at all. So it's great to be welcome and to see everyone again. So hopefully after the service, while you're having your congregational meeting, I'll be running over to New Harmony and picking up my wife and kids, helping them finish up there. So hopefully by the time the meeting's over, I'll be back. So for those of you attending, you'll be able to see my wife and children, talk with them, and they can greet you. This morning I want to start with a thought. I want to start with worship. It's a waste of time. It's actually the name of a book that I read in seminary called Worship, a Royal Waste of Time. And she's obviously playing on two thoughts. That from a non-believer, worship is. I can talk to both of my brothers. I say, would you want to go to church? And they'll laugh at me. Why? Why should I go to church? Especially, football's coming on today. There's no way I want to go to church today and watch football. But for us, we're believers. The royal part comes in, where we see God. We see Him as holy, holy, holy. Threefold is because He's so separate, so other, so much different from us. But at the same time, He's near. And He calls us to be near to Him. I know I can admit myself that sometimes I do feel like, God, I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to go to church this morning. Especially if I have to preach and share. I don't. But, yeah, I know. Yeah. If I'm to be holy as God calls me to be holy, worships integral to that. So we live in this tension. Because to be holy really basically just means to be separate, to be other. So God's saying, you should be holy. You need to be different from the non-believers. At the same time, to be with them. To be an integral part of society. So there's that tension. And you can see this play out in culture sometimes. But as Christians, we're often saying, our laws should be along the lines of what the Bible says, what God says. I think that's right. But for the non-believer, they're going to say, are you kidding me? Why? So it all comes back to people's relationship with God. That's the importance of missions. And the importance of evangelism. Because your neighbor's not going to say, I want to come to church normally, unless you really see something different in you, or maybe because, my grandson, whatever, my nephew niece is getting baptized. I'll go. Otherwise, most of the time, why not? It's holy. But for us, it's holy. It's special. For the women I work with, almost all of them, first week, they're with us. You're there and you're there. Now, part of that's because of the traumatic experiences that are coming out. But part of it's just because for us to share with them about God. And guys are very religious. They'll pray with you, they'll do everything. But they don't have a relationship with God. So for them, it's just kind of a wall. So slowly, the relationship builds. Their hearts start to understand what God does, what God did, what God's doing. So their heart falls. Eventually, they will believe. And then it's a change. Instead of praising God, praying. They're reaching out to their community, reaching out to women and men in the bars. And all that's because of the relationship. Because through that, God is making them holy, making them separate. Almost every single one of our women have gone back to their villages, gone back to their hometowns. And normally within the first 2 days that they're there, one of their relatives, parents sometimes, will say to them, really different. What happened? The door opens. They can share. They can share about what God has done for them in their life. See, Thai people are very superstitious, you might say, in some sense, but at the same time very religious. They tend to go together, but not always. So, we have a lot of girls who have Buddhist tattoos when they come to us. The tattoos are for protection, because there's a belief that there's evil spirits that are kind of haunting them. So somehow, getting these tattoos will ward off those spirits. Or you have another situation where they have spirit houses. So basically, you have your house, and right next to it is this little house that the spirits live in because you're borrowing their land. You're living on their land. So I don't know why the spirits are happy with a tiny little house or even the big house, but that's just how it is. That's all part. It's just part of their culture, part of how they grew up, and that's part of what we work with, teach with. So when we go to the bars, if I went into a bar anywhere in Red Line, assuming there's a bar somewhere in Red Line, but no, if I went into a bar in Red Line and I went up to somebody and said, hey, do you mind if I pray with you? They'll probably think, what's wrong with this guy? You'll find the nearest exit or just kind of try to ignore me. If I go into a bar in Thailand and say, may I pray with you? They'll cry. And say, yes, please pray. Now their conception of prayer is a little different, but it's just a totally different thing. For them, very religious. Very concerned with their eternal destiny. So adored him. I'm going to read a little passage, a little bit of Leviticus here. Now, again, as Christians, we tend to hear Leviticus in our faith. There we go. We just think, oh, lots of laws, and it's such a different culture, really. I mean, you have 3,000, 3,500, whatever time span separating us from when it was written. And we're in that tension too, was what applies, what doesn't apply. How does it apply? But we're going to look at Leviticus 19, verses 27 through 31. I'm sorry, 28 through 31, sorry. Do not cut your bodies for the dead, or put tattoo marks on yourselves. I am the Lord. Do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. Observe my Sabbaths, and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums, or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Now, you can notice there's a refrain in there. I am the Lord, I am the Lord, I am the Lord your God. It's all called to holiness, to be separate, to be different. Verse 27, or 28, do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoos, marks on yourselves. At that time, sometimes a dead person, they would mark themselves, thinking that somehow that would help them in the afterlife. So it's a clear call. God's saying, you don't have to do that. I am the God. I am your God. I am God of this world. So mark yourselves. And it just hits me so much that that's so much like Thailand. People mark themselves. We have girls that cut themselves. They cut themselves for different reasons. They cut themselves because it's self-mutilation, because they think their bodies are so ugly that basically they kind of want to cut off their skin. Cutters is how they're sometimes just referred to in the U.S. It's not as uncommon as you probably think. But again, it's a form of self-hatred, a form of depression, despair, really. But yet we've seen God change them. We have girls that have scars on their arms for years ago when they were cutting themselves. And now, praising God, now they say, I'm a new creation. I am beautiful. I'm wonderfully made. I am holy. God has changed them. Through that, God is changing time. One person at a time. If you look at, I have some prayer cards on the back table. If you look at the bottom right corner of our prayer card, I have a little statement there that I just figured out when I was making the prayer cards that there are more workers in the red light districts of Thailand than there are Christians in the country. It's pretty shocking. Population of 67 million approximately. 2.8 million of which work in the red light district. That's actually directly selling themselves. Taking all the other people, you probably double that number. So it's a huge thing. Yet we know that God's calling people out of there. God is transforming them, transforming their lives, transforming Thailand. I look at verse 29, very clear. Do not degrade yourselves. Do not sell your daughters. Gosh, every single one of our women is there because their parents have sent them. Sold their daughters. This says the land will be cursed. The land will be filled with wickedness. It's a travesty. Yet, God can transform it. God is transforming it. Southeast Asia, Christianity is booming. And it's not because they think, if you follow Christ, things will get a better life. But they know it's the only answer. You have Confucianism, you have Buddhism, you have Hinduism, you have Islam. You have Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses. They're all there. Some of our girls have tried multiple ones. I'll tell you that Jesus is the only answer. He's the only one who's ever answered their problems with their life. So they go and become holy because of that. Become separate. They're different from their neighbors. And that makes their neighbors curious. Wanting to know, why are they different? The last thing I want to point out here is verse 31. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists. You can walk down the streets in Bangkok, and you can see tables set up for it. And a woman there flipping sometimes tarot cards or reading tea leaves. It's all spiritists. They're trying to read fortunes. Is there any kind of way to trick the spirits, get ahead? But yet, most of the time it doesn't work. Even with the spirit house. Sometimes spirit houses will have little figurines next to it. That's supposed to be a symbol of every time that they pray that spirit house and a prayer was answered. They'll buy this little thing, for some reason that little figurine, it pleases the spirits. So we can go in and we can say, our God is the God of your spirits. He's greater. Now, that's shocking. Because they're so fear, so afraid. So often that comes down to a challenge to say, prove it. We just say, what do you want us to do? How do you want it to work? So I'll lay down something, I'll say, go home, you go back to your house, you pray, and see if God answers that. Hasn't failed yet. God always meets their prayer. Always answers you. They come back shocked. Who is this? What are you talking